Fuck Crash Bandicoot, fucking orange motherfucker.
Alright folks, you want your damn Crash video? Here's your goddamn Crash video. I'm working on a video at the moment that is not Crash related, and I don't want comments on it asking me about goddamn Crash 4. That video should be dropping in about a week, but it could easily be sooner or later than that, I really don't know. Depends on how fast I want to work. That in mind, I'm not just making this video out of necessity, as there are some things I want to talk about, so let's get down to it. A few things first I have to establish before we get to the real meat of this video. First is Crash 4. It exists, and it's called Crash 4. There's a bit of a controversy over this name. Obviously, this is far from the fourth game in the series. There's this forced meme going around of the Ocho, as if you include the main games, this would be the 8th, with Crash 1 to Warped being 3, and then 4 of Wrath, Twinsanity, Titans, and Mutant. Yeah, it's incredibly forced and not funny, but I didn't make it, so I don't know. I'll be perfectly honest. I had no idea there was even a debate being had about this until very recently, around the time of the leaks. I'm only going to touch on it briefly. The argument seems to be whether or not we'll consider the post-Naughty Dog era, or just throw out all of that content completely. Now, from the perspective of story, it seems like this could be a retcon of those latter 4 games, but could just as easily be a midquel. Either way, it definitely looks like Warped will be the jumping off point for the story. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't really give a shit about this argument at all. Whether or not the next game continues the story of Warped or Mutant or Twinsanity, I don't really fucking care. All I care about as far as the story is the story told well, and does it build on old lore in a meaningful way? So long as these concerns are satisfied, it could be a follow-up to the fucking Crash Bandicoot Mutant Island for mobile phones, for all I care. I'm not concerned with supposed retcons because I believe that canon as a concept is overrated. How a story fits into canon shouldn't really be the sole determining factor in whether or not that story is good. For example, let's take a brief detour to Dragon Ball, and don't worry, I won't get too into much detail, it's not even that important anyway. During the anime's run, a short TV special was made about the tragic fate of Goku's forgotten dad, Bardock. In my opinion, it's a pretty good story. Not perfect, but pretty excellent all around. However, it was an offshoot of the anime and is technically non-canon to the truest form of Dragon Ball, the manga, written by Akira Toriyama. Many years later, Toriyama would make a Bardock story of his own, a bonus chapter called Dragon Ball Minus, which has gone down in history as the worst thing to ever carry the Dragon Ball name. I'm serious. It's fucking terrible in every sense of the word. For those who are intrigued, Mystere Fusion explains it much better. Loud car outside. Anyway, that story is unanimously considered to be atrocious, not just atrocious, atrocious, many troci at once. Everybody hates it. But it is canon. It was drawn by Akira Toriyama, the original creator of Dragon Ball, as a bonus chapter for a manga that is confirmed by him to be canon to the Dragon Ball universe. So I guess the Bardock TV special is now completely irrelevant and not a good story because it's non-canon. By the way, here's something else to consider. The original, canon Dragon Ball manga contains this panel. This panel is a redraw of a frame from the Bardock TV special. This is an obvious reference to that special and led many people to believe that this special was canon to the Dragon Ball manga, until Dragon Ball Minus came out. So, that story was canon and was good, but suddenly isn't canon and therefore it stops being good. How does that happen? It's not like the special changed at all since we last saw it, it's the same old TV special from many years ago. How did it become bad? The answer is, it didn't become bad. Canon is an overrated concept, and canon doesn't solely determine whether or not a story is good. So the other side of this argument interests me more. The question of whether or not the ideas and concepts of later games would be considered, whether or not they would influence this game. I mean, Nitro Fueled should have already proven that this shit wasn't off the table, but if any doubt persisted, there's this line from the end of the trailer.
How many times have you beaten this clown anyway?
3.
Really? Only 3? Funny. Seemed like more.
So while the stories may or may not be disregarded, the ideas these games brought forth are definitely still being considered. To me, this is a smart move, and it just makes sense. These games were mostly terrible, but they managed to bring some really good ideas to the table. After all, why let an amazing character like Velo go to waste on a game as terrible as Crash Nitro Kart? Best to just recycle him in a good game like Nitro Fueled. So, as for the debate of Crash 4 or Crash Ocho, the answer is kinda complicated. I will happily just call it Crash 4 though, because the Ocho was a forced meme and I'm glad to see it die. Now the second thing I actually want to talk about is the Sonic movie, which seems kinda random, but I'll tie it back to Crash. Now, I haven't seen the Sonic movie, I have never seen it, and I never will see it. I have absolutely no intention of ever thinking about seeing it. That's because the Sonic movie isn't an actual fucking movie. It's a commercial. A terrible commercial created for stupid children enjoyed primarily by disgusting, autistic, Man-children. It's not a fucking movie. Stop calling it a fucking movie. It's a concentrated form of Down syndrome regurgitated onto a screen. Anybody that likes this commercial is a single-digit IQ fucking I'm joking, by the way. I don't actually give a shit. If you like it, knock yourself out. Anyways, the Sonic media I hesitate to call a movie was originally very different. We all remember the initial trailers of the absolutely hideous Sonic design. Nobody would shut the fuck up about it. Now, most people were just teasing, as they should, because it looked absolutely disgusting and deserved to be made fun of. But I think that there was a small minority of people that were absolutely viscerally angry. People that really felt that the design needed to be changed. Even though I call them a small minority, as I do believe the majority of people were just casually mocking the design, that minority was just large enough and just loud enough that the producers of the movie actually listened. They changed the design of Sonic, and everybody rejoiced and celebrated like this was a good thing. I personally completely despise everything about this. I hate that the design was changed, not because I thought the old one was good or that the new one was worse, because the old design was definitely hideous and the newer design was definitely an improvement. I hesitate to say that the movie is much better with the redesigned Sonic. I think it's more accurate to say that this commercial is ever so slightly less terrible now that Sonic isn't quite as hideous as before. The resulting movie may be less bad, but it's also less interesting in my opinion. This is one of the most hilariously disgusting things I've ever seen, while this is bad, but not bad enough that I can laugh at it. This is a hideous mutant created by some horribly out-of-touch millionaires. This is the bold artistic vision of an absolute psychopath. While this is a neat, safe, corporate machine designed to shift as many units as possible. I hate the decision to redesign Sonic, not just because I think the resulting commercial is less entertaining, but also because I think it establishes an absolutely terrible precedent in people's minds. What has this whole ordeal taught us exactly? That if an angry mob of anonymous internet users throw a big enough temper tantrum, they can control artists. I think that in a post-Sonic movie world, fans now think that they have a right to control art. That, as a fan of something, you have a right to have art delivered to you in a specific way. You don't. I have to make it abundantly clear as well that there is a clear distinction between this kind of professional complaining and genuine criticism. It's one thing to say that you don't like the way a piece of art looks, it's one thing to suggest how it could be changed. It's another thing entirely to demand that it be changed to cater to your preferences. Criticism is totally fine, but this kind of autistic screeching is just disgusting. Case in point, Change.org petition, Activision, change Crash Bandicoot 4's horrible new design. I'm not going to actually comment much on Crash 4. I have a Discord server which is linked in the description. If I'm online, you can go there and ask me directly. Otherwise, you can leave a comment and I may get back to it, although I make no promises. Personally, I'm more interested in making fun of the moron that wrote this.
After waiting for so long, we have finally received the news of Crash Bandicoot 4 with the tagline, "It's about time." The game looks fantastic, and we hardcore fans from the 90s have been waiting for a true successor to Warped, but this is not it! It could be, if we didn't have this horrendous Crash's redesign worthy of bad games like Mind Over Mutant, or Skylanders.
Okay, I will not be going into my personal thoughts about this model. For the sake of argument though, I'll take your side, so fine, this model is really terrible, apparently. Supposedly, this is your problem. Now tell me, do you think the people that made this can be trusted to make a Crash game? If you find this design to be so problematic, why would you assume that the rest of the game is otherwise perfect? I hope you realize there's a very tight link between the people that made this model and made these levels. I feel like your fucking mom having to explain this shit to you.
This is not our Crash, and all you need to do is use the character's design from Insane Trilogy. That's all we fans are asking.
Yeah, guys, just throw out all the hard work you've done on this model. Just completely scrap all the animations you made for it. That's all we harmless, well-intentioned fans are asking. This is completely fucking retarded. Look at Insane Trilogy's levels for a second, okay? There is a clear focus on very detailed textures, a sense of realism to all of it. The Insane Trilogy models reflect this approach. Crash has detailed fur, these frogs have bumpy skin. This cartoon rat now has hair. Isn't it nice how there's a connection between the designs of the models and the designs of the world? There's a coherence to all of it. The visual style of Crash 4 looks closer to Reignited Trilogy, which makes sense since both projects were developed by Toys for Bob. Reignited and the trailers for this game feature flatter, more cartoony textures that rely far less on a sense of realism. There's less of a focus on fine detail and a greater focus on shape and color. Now, doesn't it just make sense for the character models to reflect this, the way the world does? It would look so retarded if the character models and level geometry were just in two completely different styles. And I'm not arguing for the merits of one design approach over the other, because I've made that argument in other videos, and you could just, you know, I've said it on Discord. But the point I'm making is, wouldn't you just want it to be coherent? Wouldn't you just want it to kind of fit together? Wouldn't you want it to be consistent?
Remember Sonic's movie? Well, they are repeating the same mistake. Now they need to change the design before it's too late.
This right here is the line that fucking triggered me, to be honest. I'm very triggered right now. You have to be trying to be this fucking entitled.
Please don't repeat Crash's bad history after Naughty Dog era, in which Crash slowly turned bastardized due to developers that have no care to the original IP. It's like they are laughing at us. Learn from Insane Trilogy. They updated the golden era of Crash to today's standards. It had amazing success. Now follow that path and don't destroy Crash again!
Insane Trilogy only sold well because the original games are fondly remembered. They're fondly remembered games because they're good. The success of Insane Trilogy had everything to do with the contributions of the original team and nothing to do with Vicarious Visions or Activision. Their contributions only complicated things, and all they did was make the game shittier.
Please, we're not asking to make the game from scratch. We're just asking you to change the characters modeled, Crash, Cortex, Coco, etc., to what was done in Insane Trilogy and CTR Nitro Fueled. We fans want Crash to have a long-lasting return, instead of ending the fun on CTR. We want Crash to feel coherent in all it''s canon new games. We want to follow a story that makes sense in our minds. We want to follow a story that makes sense on
Our minds and senses. Okay,
Instead we have what is in front of us. It's like history is repeating itself. We started good, then decided to destroy the characters and destroy the fans' dreams. Please, Activision. Please, Toys for Mom. Please don't destroy our dreams with a capital D.
well, I got news for you. If your life's dream is to have a new Crash game with no coherent art style, then I feel bad for you. You should aim a little higher. I feel like most kids aim to be like president or an astronaut or some shit like that. Okay, look, you could probably hear my AC, and also, I like to exaggerate. I like to tease. I enjoy me some hyperbole. I established that in my last discussion video, hopefully you've seen it. But I'm gonna put the memes to rest for a second. Let's just get honest, let's just be serious. Change.org has never benefited the world in a positive way. Change.org has bred a community of slacktivists. Is this really the kind of behavior we want to cultivate? Do we really want to encourage this kind of pathetic behavior? Do we really want to teach mobs of children that they can have their way if they autistically screech loud enough? Is this really what we want to do right now? Unironically, if you use Change.org for anything,
You are stupid. Yes, I know, that's insulting, but it's also the truth.
Anyway, that's about all I have to say. I just wanted to make fun of this stupid fucking petition. If you want to know what I think of Crash 4, ask away in the comments or hit me up on Discord. The latter is a better idea, probably. I've got a better video coming soon, hopefully, so I hope you enjoy that when it drops. You know, I just realized, actually, that I opened that video on a joke about how my last video was a fighter's tutorial, except now my last video wasn't a fighter's tutorial, it was this, so... Shit. I'm not gonna get rid of that joke, by the way. That joke is really funny and it's gonna stay, so you guys are just gonna have to deal with it. When you watch that video, you'll just have to remember that it was funny. It's a funny joke, and you're gonna laugh at it. Anyways, this video is over. Goodbye.
What's the word I'm looking for? Like, I'm so goddamn mad, motherfucker!